The freighter came in on one engine, and the wrong attitude entirely. Bay 7 docking manifest, station platform 63, Helix Prime Orbital. That is where I was standing when the day became the kind of day that gets a report number. My name is Morrow. I approve dockings and prevent cargo disputes from becoming diplomatic incidents, and I have done this for 11 cycles without a single day that required more than the standard form set. I am telling you about a day that required 7 supplemental forms and a new station protocol. But that comes later. The other thing comes first. Cold drop Bay 7 observation deck, 14:33 station time. The breaching charge blew the deck plate 6 centimeters inward and then stopped, held by the emergency vacuum seal. The smoke had not finished clearing before Vrakshul came through it. He was 2.5 meters of powered Rakthian armor with kill tallies stamped into every panel. I counted 17 species in the 2 seconds I could see him clearly before my body remembered what cover was. He came through the breach at a walk. Not a crouch, not a tactical run. A walk, the way something walks when it has already decided the question. His boarding party spread behind him. 8 of them, and there were more in the corridor beyond. The woman standing between him and the rest of the platform was named Sierra Vance. She was the second shortest person in the docking bay, including the juveniles. She had a security-grade holdout on her hip that she hadn't touched. She was holding an empty thermos. Vrakshul looked at her. He looked at the 2 humans flanking her, Hank, built like a load pallet, and Marcus, who hadn't moved but whose stillness had a texture to it that was different from normal stillness. He looked back at Sierra. His translator clicked on. "Humans," he said. "The patrol sends humans. They must have run out of options." Sierra tilted her head. "We're not patrol." She looked at the thermos. She looked at him. "And I'm not going to move. I've had a bad week and you're the worst part of it so far." He raised the plasma rifle. She moved. "Stay with this." 3 hours earlier, Bay 7, docking clearance desk 11:41 station time. My partner Quint told me about the emergency clearance request before the vessel even appeared on scanner. He said it the way you say weather. Humans, emergency docking, mass discrepancy on the preliminary. That is how Quint says most things. He has been on platform 63 for 15 cycles and has achieved a state of perfect professional neutrality on all subjects except hydraulics, those he feels strongly about. The vessel that limped into Bay 7 should not have been able to limp anywhere. Hull plates at angles that implied a philosophical disagreement with structural integrity. Carbon scoring on every surface, not combat scoring, which is uniform, but the kind that happens when you are moving fast through something that was on fire. Where the port engine assembly should have been, there was a smooth ablative scar, not a removal. The engine had simply ceased to exist. The craft achieved a landing that my structural integrity scanner classified as a probability event. Something that happens once, draws a crowd, and gets referenced in conversation for years afterward. My scanner logged the vessel's manifest, flagged the missing mass immediately, and began what it called a preliminary reconciliation inquiry. I began what I would call staring. The crew disembarked. 5 humans, all visibly short on sleep. The woman at the front had dark hair cut close, a scar along her left jaw, and was already in an argument with the docking ramp before she had reached the bottom of it, something about the hydraulic assist being set wrong, which meant the bay pressure seal was cycling 4 seconds late on every approach, which was not her problem today, but it was going to be someone's problem eventually. She reached the clearance desk with her manifest chip extended, and her eyes on the dock behind me, counting something. "Vance Sierra," she said. "Freighter Caledonia out of Helix 3rd. We need emergency docking, fuel priority, and someone to look at bay hydraulics before we leave, because that is a safety issue." She set the manifest chip on my desk. She also set beside it a thermos. Dented, heat-scored, the lettering faded to almost nothing almost. I could read 3 words, "Do not touch." She noticed me reading it. "That one's mine," she said, "just finding a surface." This was the wrong detail. Not the thermos itself, a worn personal item that is ordinary. It was the way she set it down, not beside her, where you'd put something you want to keep track of, but equidistant between us, like an object being made available for inspection. I did not know what to do with this observation, so I filed it and ran the manifest. The mass discrepancy surfaced in 40 seconds. The Caledonia's declared cargo was 30% lighter than its registered capacity. I said so. "Expensive decoys," she said. "Consumer electronics mostly. They make surprisingly good chaff." She picked up the thermos and turned it over once in her hands. "Someone was trying to board us 4 days out. Jettisoning the cargo bought us the margin we needed to reach you." "Someone," I said. "Belkin Syndicate, boarding division." She set the thermos back down. "6 days, by the way, since I've had real coffee. Do you know what 6 days does to a person?" I did not. I began the supplemental incident form. The Belkin Syndicate's boarding division has 340 successful platform raids across the outer sectors. Not a number I looked up that morning. A number every docking adjudicator in the orbital lane system knows, because it appears in the quarterly threat assessment circulars as a category of unavoidable professional reality. Their boarding doctrine was written by species threat analysts. Their shields have a certified deflection rating against every grade of platform-mounted defensive turret that Platform 63 operates. They have never lost a raider to a non-military crew. 22 boarders, across 2 light cruisers and 1 dedicated boarding craft. That is what the supplemental form would eventually record. That was the force following the Caledonia. I did not know any of this yet. I was writing Consumer Electronics Chaff Deployment in a field that said Cargo Discrepancy Explanation, and thinking that of all the explanations I had received in 11 cycles at this desk, this one was the most structurally complete while also being the least satisfying. "You filed a syndicate contact report at the time of the incident?" I asked. "Filed it, flagged it, and sent it to 3 different authorities who I expect are currently composing a very thoughtful response." She looked at the dock again. Her crew had fanned out, not wandering, not waiting. They had gone to specific places. Her gaze tracked them without moving. "How long does emergency fuel priority take?" 40 minutes standard queue." She made the face of someone renegotiating their relationship with 40 minutes. "That's fine." A pause. "Is it going to be fine?" There was something in how she asked that I could not locate at the time. Not worry. Something more like a person checking a calculation they already trust and wanting one more data point. I told her standard queue was reliable. She nodded once, which felt less like reassurance and more like recording my answer. I was still thinking about this when the station alert fired. The alarm was not subtle. Platform 63's proximity warning is a 2-tone pulse that activates every light panel on the exterior ring and causes most species to immediately reconsider their life choices. It activated at 12:03 station time. I checked my scanner. Multiple unidentified vessels on approach, fast intercept vector, no transponder signals. Quent's voice came through my earpiece. "Morrow, you have inbound." I looked up from the desk. Sierra Vance was already looking at the far wall, not at me, at the wall, which was also the direction the approach vectors were coming from. Then she looked at her crew. A look was exchanged that I cannot describe except to say that it had the quality of something decided rather than communicated. "Tommy Lucia," she said, not loud. "Engineering, turrets first, then the ventral seals." She didn't wait for acknowledgement. "Hank Marcus, you know." Hank, who was large enough to make the bay feel smaller, said, "Yep." Marcus said nothing. He was already moving. She picked up the thermos from my desk. She looked at it for a moment. She set it back down. "That stays here," she said, to me specifically, like it was an instruction. "Where's your highest observation point?" I told her about the observation deck. She asked for the fastest route. I gave it to her. Good, she said, you should come. That is not part of my. I know, she was already heading for the corridor. Come anyway. This is the part of the incident I have the most difficulty filing correctly. There is a field on the standard form for adjudicator's decision to accompany responding crew, and the form expects a rationale in the blank space. I have written and deleted 6 versions of what went in that field. The truest version is this. Something in the way she said, "come anyway," made it sound less like an invitation and more like a classification, as if she had looked at me and decided what category of situation this was, and I was in it regardless of my filing preferences. I went anyway. We reached the observation deck at 12:19, 14 minutes before the breach. She stood at the viewport and watched the approach vectors resolve into ship silhouettes. I watched her watch them. She had the thermos in her left hand, empty, and she was turning it slowly, once, twice, the way you'd spin a coin while working through a problem. The label caught the light. Do not touch. How many boarders typically? I asked. I meant it as a professional question. With 2 cruisers and a dedicated boarding craft. She didn't look away from the viewport. 22 maybe. Vraxshall likes clean numbers. You know the boarding primus by name. We've met before. She set the thermos down on the window ledge where it sat in the rim of refracted light from the station exterior. He's going to come through himself first. He always does. He'll make an offer, stand aside, survive. He thinks the offer is what makes people hesitate. And does it make people hesitate? She looked at me then. Her resting expression registered as system offline on every threat assessment scanner I own. I recalibrated twice that morning. The scanner was fine. No, she said. I've just had a very bad week and I don't feel like moving. The breach charge hit the deck plate at 14:33. Vraxshall came through the smoke at a walk. And Sierra Vance, half his mass, no armor, one empty thermos on the windowsill behind her, said she wasn't going to move. He raised the plasma rifle. What happened next is in 7 supplemental forms, a new station protocol, and the incident report I have been trying to file for 31 hours. But I will tell you this first. My bioluminescent throat stripe had been cool blue all morning, all through the manifest check and the alert, and the 14 minutes of watching approach vectors resolve into silhouettes. It went a distress white the moment he raised that rifle. Not because of the rifle. Because of the look on her face. Vraxshall fired. She was already not where she had been. I have reviewed the incident recording 4 times. The shot went wide by 40 centimeters, which sounds like a large margin until you understand she moved toward him to create it. Not away. Toward. She was inside the radius of the plasma burn before the second trigger pull was possible. Her left hand found his weapon arm. Her right hand struck his helmet, not a punch, something lower and more precise, the heel of her palm against the joint where the faceplate met the collar seal. The sound it made was wrong, metal on metal but wrong. Vraxshall looked down at her. Then he used his other arm, the armored one, the one rated for breaching operations, and shoved. She went across the deck. The distance was approximately 4 meters. She hit the floor hard enough that the deck vibrated under my feet, and I was standing near the support pillar 12 meters away. Vraxshall turned back to his boarding party and said something in Rakthian that my translator logged as a dismissal, a category of event too small to require further attention. He began moving toward the far corridor. She got up. Not quickly, not dramatically. She came up from the floor the way someone gets up when they have done it before in other circumstances and have already decided the floor is not the final position. Her left knee, then her right. She straightened. She did not look at her hands. She looked at him. His back was turned. He did not see this. His boarding party did, and 3 of them shifted their weight in a way that had nothing to do with moving and everything to do with their bodies, registering something they had not filed a name for yet. I was filing it as fast as I could. The first crack in the syndicate's certainty was not the shove, it was the getting up. The shove was exactly what their threat model predicted. What came after it was not. My bioluminescent stripe moved from distress white toward something the standard reference does not have a name for. The closest entry is acute recalibration event. I have circled it in the reference document since. Her voice reached me across the deck, level and quiet. Morrow, sections D through G emergency lockdown. Do it now. This was the moment I became something other than a witness. I had my station authorization chip in my left hand because I had been holding it since the breach charge went off, not deliberately, just the thing your hands do when your body is working faster than your decisions. I found the override panel behind the support pillar. I keyed sections D through G, and the blast doors on 4 corridors sealed simultaneously. The sound traveled through the hull, a deep clunk, then 3 more, then silence where there had been station standard ambient noise. From the far corridor, I heard someone who was not Hank say something loud and surprised, and then not say anything else. Hank was in corridor 12, which I know because the security feed is part of my station authorization, and I pulled it on my handheld while Morrow watched the observation deck. He was managing 4 of the syndicate's boarders, 4 trained Rakthian raiders with combat experience across a combined 120 confirmed engagements, which I know because the syndicate files its engagement records with the Outer Sector Trade Authority, which I know because I pulled those records later. What Hank was doing with 4 of them was this: he had picked one up. Not a weapon, one of the boarders. The armor alone weighed as much as Hank did. He had it by the equipment harness, and he was using it to move the second one, and the look on his face, I know this from the security feed, was the look of a man who is doing a job he considers straightforward and is slightly frustrated that it is taking this long. He put both of them down. He looked at the remaining 2. 2, he said aloud to no one, still 2. The remaining pair made a decision that I classify, on reflection, as one of the more accurate threat assessments made that day. They retreated toward the sealed blast door. The blast door did not open. I had locked it. Hank found this reasonable. He said so. Yep. Then he addressed himself to the problem. Marcus was in corridor 9. I know this because I pulled the same security feed and then watched a different thing happen. The feed for corridor 9 shows 4 Rakthian boarders entering from the breach point at 14:36. It shows Marcus already in the corridor. What happens next takes 11 seconds, and I have watched it at 1/4 speed 3 times, and I am still not certain what I am seeing. What the feed shows is 4 boarders entering from one end, Marcus not moving from where he was standing, and then, in the following 11 seconds, a sequence of events where the 4 boarders end up on the floor, each in a different place, in an order that appears to have been chosen rather than arrived at. He did not move much. That is what I cannot account for. They moved. He did not. They aimed. He was not where they aimed. The corridor's space reorganized itself around him while he stood approximately still, and when it finished reorganizing, the corridor contained 4 boarders in positions they had not chosen. His voice came through comms at 14:37, 1 second after the last boarder stopped moving. Clear, he said. That was it. His voice had the quality of a man reporting the weather. I thought about Quint, who also reports things like weather. I thought the comparison was instructive. No mercy, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Those were the 3 things Marcus did not use in corridor 9, and I cataloged them into the incident record because they seemed important for the eventual reclassification. The thing that was actually happening in those corridors was not aggression. I want to be precise about this, because aggression I know how to file. What was happening was more like a conclusion. A very calm, very orderly conclusion that the boarding party was arriving at one member at a time. My stripe was white and getting hot. At 14:38, Quent came through on comms. He manages the station's lower levels, 3 breach points below us, standard capacity for 1 senior adjudicator under normal circumstances. "Morrow," he said, "my 3 is your 1. I understood this to mean he was managing the 3rd breach point with approximately the same resources I had. I said, "The humans are handling it." A pause, then, "Which humans?" "The ones from the freighter." Another pause, longer. "I'm putting in for a transfer," Quint said and went off comms. At 14:41, Lucia's voice came through on the crew channel Sierra had patched me into. "Turrets are back online. Manual targeting only. The automatic acquisition is still locked from the last maintenance cycle." From somewhere below me, Sierra's voice, "Tommy. 2 more minutes on the targeting reroute." Tommy's voice had a specific quality, the voice of someone who is working very fast and talking while working, which is a different rhythm than talking while standing still. "The ventral seals are holding. If they hit the same breach point again, the foam dispensers will trigger automatically. That part's working." "Good," Sierra said. 2 minutes is fine." It was, I noted, not delivered as reassurance. It was delivered as a logistics confirmation, the same way she had confirmed fuel queue time at my desk. 2 minutes is fine, a variable that falls within acceptable parameters. The Syndicate's 2 light cruisers were still on approach. Their shields were still operational. Platform 63's turrets, even back online, had a certified 0% effective hit rate against those shields on automatic targeting. Manual targeting was a different question. That question had not yet been answered. Vrakshul had not left the observation deck. I want to be clear about this because the incident timeline gets compressed in the telling, and it is easy to lose the fact that from the moment he shoved her to the moment she got up was perhaps 4 seconds, and from that moment to this one was less than 8 minutes. In 8 minutes, his boarding party had lost corridors 9 and 12. Sections D through G were locked, the 3rd breach point was still contested, and the turrets were coming back online. He had not processed this yet. He was operating on the model his threat analysts had built, the model that said a non-military crew of 5 humans aboard a damaged freighter was a category of obstacle, not a category of resistance. He was watching the door, where the rest of his party had gone. Sierra came around the support pillar and stopped 12 meters from him. She was moving normally, which is the detail I keep returning to. Her left knee had hit the deck hard enough that I heard it. She was moving as if this had not happened. He turned when he heard her footsteps. There was a moment, 2 seconds, maybe 3, where he looked at her and she looked at him, and the air between them had a quality I can only describe as a calculation being revised. His, not hers. Hers had already been done. "You're still here," he said. "Still here," she said. "You want to try that again, or is this the part where you reconsider?" His bioluminescent stress response is not something I can read. Rakthians don't have one. What I could read was the set of his shoulders, the slight forward weight shift, the position of his hands. I had been a security adjudicator for 11 cycles. I knew what it looked like when something was about to happen. My scanner, which I had not put away, ran an automatic proximity threat assessment on Sierra Vance. Single body, mass 61 kilograms, no armor, no long-range weapons. It returned the same result it had at the manifest desk. I thought, the scanner has the same information Vrakshul has. Then I thought, that is the problem. Vrakshul charged. What I did not expect, what I am still working out how to describe in the incident report's final section, was that in the moment he moved, Sierra looked over his shoulder. Not at him, past him, at me. She said one sentence. Flat, unhurried, the same voice she had used for the lockdown order and the coffee complaint and the docking fee argument. "Morrow, When this is over, does this station have a coffee I haven't already tried? Then she turned back to Vrakshul. He was 2 meters away and closing. He was built for this. That is what I kept thinking in the second before he reached her, that everything about Vrakshul had been built, refined, and decorated with the evidence of its own success. The armor was 3 centimeters of layered combat-grade plate. The mass behind it was the product of a species that evolved in high gravity and then spent 2 generations making itself worse. He had done this before. He had done it 17 times against 17 species, and the results were stamped into his chest panel. She tilted her head. It was a small movement, the kind you make when you are thinking about something else. He was 1 meter away, and she tilted her head, and I thought, she is about to die and she is thinking about something else. She was not thinking about something else. She stepped left, not back, left, at the moment his arms extended. His reach committed before she moved. By the time his hands were where she had been, she wasn't there anymore, and the momentum he had put into the charge had nowhere to go except forward, and he corrected for it, and she was already behind his right shoulder. She waited. He turned to find her. It took him 1 full second, which in the geometry of what was happening was the wrong amount of time to need. Her right hand found his weapon arm again. Her left hip dropped into a pivot point I have since had explained to me by 3 separate biomechanics specialists, all of whom said the same thing in different words. She used his own correction to do the work. She did not push. She did not pull. She borrowed. Vrakshul 2.5 meters, powered armor, kill tallies on 17 species, left the deck. The arc was clean. That is the word I keep returning to, clean. He went up at an angle, turned once in the air, and came down onto 2 of his own boarding party who had been moving in through the breach point. All 3 hit the deck in a sequence that sounded like large, larger, largest. The observation deck went silent. 2 seconds, maybe 3. Sierra dusted off her hands. She did not look at the result of this. She looked at the breach point. Basic leverage, she said. Mass is just a number you negotiate with. My bioluminescent stripe did something I have not been able to locate in the Letharian standard reference. The closest entry, as I mentioned, is acute recalibration event. The actual entry I should have been looking at, I know this now, is a sub-entry 3 pages later in a section titled Responses Occurring Outside the Documented Threat Assessment Range. It reads, in the event of a stimulus that exceeds the calibration ceiling of standard threat assessment reflex, the bioluminescent stress response may enter an unlisted state. This state is considered temporary. I have been off color for 31 hours. I am beginning to question the word temporary. Vrakshul was alive. I want to be precise about this because precision is my job, and because I know what it looked like and I know the questions that follow. He was alive and conscious, and the armor's structural diagnostic, which feeds automatically to the station's emergency systems when a combat-grade suit registers impact, read, tertiary load, wrist assembly, structural compromise, non-critical. Non-critical, wrist assembly, that was the damage total. He had gone through the air at a height I measured later from the security feed at approximately 2 meters. He had landed on 2 other combatants. His armor had sustained damage to the wrist. She had pulled every strike. I did not understand this yet. I am putting it here because the report requires sequence, and this is where it belongs. Lucia's voice came through at 14:47. Manual targeting is live. I have a solution on the lead cruiser, thruster assembly, port side. Sierra from across the deck, take it. No hesitation. No confirmation request. The word take carrying the full weight of what it meant, and Lucia understanding this, and the turrets firing 30 seconds later with the sound of something that had been waiting for 11 cycles to do its job. The lead cruiser's port thruster exploded in a clean secondary detonation. The ship spun 30 degrees off its approach vector and held there, inert. It did not fire back. Its shields, which were impervious to the turrets on automatic, had not been designed to compensate for the angle Lucia had found, because Lucia had spent 19 minutes building a solution the automatic systems would never have reached. The second cruiser ran. Lucia said very quietly, "Running." Then lead prediction, "I have it." Sierra said, "Your call." The second shot caught the fleeing cruiser in its thruster assembly from an angle that required the targeting system to account for the cruiser's own evasion pattern before the evasion was complete. I have had this explained to me twice. I still do not fully understand how she knew where it was going before it went there. The cruiser spun out, thrusters dark, and drifted. Two cruisers, neither able to maneuver, neither firing. From below, Marcus's voice, "Charges set." A pause. "Now," Sierra said. The boarding craft, the one that had made the breach, the one Vrakshal had come through first, came apart at its midsection in a sharp, controlled detonation. The breach it had made in the hull sealed immediately as the craft separated, the emergency foam in the corridor dispensers triggering on impact threshold. 4 of the Syndicate's boarders, who had been retreating toward the breach point, were in the corridor when the foam went. Expanding hardening foam at rapid dispersal is not a pleasant experience. The 4 boarders were not killed. They were, however, comprehensively stopped. No mercy, no quarter, no exit. 22 boarders, all of them accounted for. The ones in the corridors, the ones on the observation deck, the 4 in the foam, and Vrakshal and his 2 landing companions still on the deck behind me. The station's emergency alarm, which had been cycling since 1433, went quiet. The silence it left was large. Sierra stood at the viewport for a moment. Outside, 2 disabled cruisers, a debris field where the boarding craft had been, and approximately 11 minutes of elapsed station time since the breach. She turned away from the viewport. She walked to the windowsill. She picked up the thermos. She turned it in her hands once, the same slow rotation she had used in the 14 minutes before the breach. The label caught the light, "Do not touch." She set it back down. "Morrow," she said, "file the preliminary." I was already filing it. The preliminary incident form has a field for elapsed time, incident onset to resolution. The minimum duration the form accepts is 30 minutes. Our elapsed time was 11 minutes. I left the field blank and moved to the supplemental. The supplemental cross-references the responding crew's registration data. Standard documentation, origin world, classification, service record. I ran the lookup on each crew member in sequence. Tommy, Lucia, Hank, Marcus, all routine. Then Sierra Vance. Her file loaded to 94% and threw an error. Not a data error, a classification error. The origin field had loaded Karath 9, the name was there, and then the field immediately to its right, the one labeled environmental classification, had tried to load a number and stalled. I could see 1 digit before the system defaulted to pending verification. The digit was 9. I ran the lookup again. Same result. Karath 9, classification beginning with 9 field pending. I looked at the standard environmental classification reference, which I keep on my second screen because it comes up in cargo manifests. The scale runs from Class 1, controlled habitat, minimal native hazard, to Class 7, extreme persistence predator environment, survival rates below 12% without specialized equipment. The scale in the version of the reference I owned stopped at Class 7. I had never had a reason to look beyond it. I filed a full registration request to the Galactic Personnel Authority and flagged it priority. Standard response time, 2 to 6 hours. I looked at the observation deck. Sierra was talking to Hank, who had appeared at some point from Corridor 12 with a relaxed expression and a small tear in his left sleeve. Marcus was beside him, undamaged, holding a detonator casing. Vrakshal was still on the deck. His boarding party was in various states of secured and immobile. The foam in the corridor below had hardened to a structural density that the station's emergency reference described as permanent without mechanical removal. 11 minutes. I looked at the error on my screen. The digit 9 waiting. What classification, I was thinking, starts with 9 and is not on the reference I have used for 11 cycles? What kind of world does that, and what kind of person does it make? Vrakshel moved. Not standing, he was not standing. He pushed himself up to one elbow, the damaged wrist held against his chest, and he looked at Sira across the length of the deck. His translator clicked on. He said something. My translator logged it and then flagged it for review because the construction was unusual. It was not a threat, not a concession. It was closer to a question, though it wasn't framed as one. He said, "What are you?" Sira was already looking at him. She had been, I think, since he moved. She picked up the thermos again. She held it loosely at her side. "Tired," she said, "mostly just tired." She turned to me. The question she had asked mid-charge, "Does this station have a coffee I haven't already tried?" was still in the air between us, unanswered. "Well," she said. The station intercom activated. Commander Elf's voice, calm and authoritative across all decks. "Attention Platform 63. We are registering a cleared boarding event in Bay 7 and the observation deck. Security Adjudicator Morrow, can you confirm resolution?" I looked at the observation deck. I looked at my screen, with its 9 and its pending field and its reference that stopped 3 classes too early. I pressed the comms key. "Confirmed," I said. "Resolution achieved. Crew of the freighter Caledonia responding." A pause from Elf's end. "The humans," she said. It had the same quality as Quent's voice when he said it. "Weather, a category of thing." "Yes," I said, "the humans." Another pause, then, "I'm coming up." Elf arrived at 15:04. She came through the observation deck door with 4 eyes taking in 4 separate sections of the room simultaneously, which is standard for her species, and which I have never quite adjusted to in the 3 cycles she has commanded this station. She surveyed the deck in approximately 6 seconds. Vrakshel on the floor, wrist against his chest. His boarding party in various states of secured. The debris from the breach point. The 2 crew members, Hank and Marcus, standing near the viewport with the relaxed posture of people who have finished a task and are waiting for the next one. Then she looked at Sira. Sira was leaning against the windowsill. The thermos was beside her. She had not, as far as I could tell, moved from this position since she picked it up and set it back down after the deck cleared. "I need an explanation," Elf said. "Physics," Sira said. "Very aggressive physics." Elf looked at me. "She is not wrong," I said. This was the most accurate thing I said during the entire incident. Elf spent 11 minutes on the observation deck asking questions that I answered, and that Sira answered when she felt the question was specifically hers. Vrakshel was taken into custody by the station's security team, the full team, 6 officers, though 3 of them were visibly uncertain about the ratio. The boarding party members from the corridors were brought up in sequence. The 4 from the hull foam took longer. Extraction required mechanical tools and a significant quantity of solvent. The security team's senior officer filed a preliminary count. 22 boarders, all in custody, 0 station casualties, 0 crew casualties from the Caledonia. He read this to Elf with the tone of a person reading something they have checked twice because they did not believe it the first time. Elf asked if the count was confirmed. He confirmed it. She looked at the deck again, then at me. "File the bounty claim," she said. "Full rate, all 22. Sira was talking to Hank when I approached her with the bounty confirmation. The conversation appeared to be about the hydraulic assist on the docking ramp, which Hank felt had been the correct inciting grievance to raise on arrival. 200,000 credits, I said, combined across all 22. The syndicate has standing warrants in 4 sectors. She took the confirmation chip. She looked at it. She handed it to Hank, who pocketed it with the same energy he had used to confirm there were still 2 boarders in the corridor. "Good," she said, "then, the docking fee." "Waived," Elf said from behind me. I had not heard her approach. "Entirely. And I want to offer you a standing contract, platform security, retainer basis. Monthly rate negotiable." "I appreciate that," Sierra said. She picked up the thermos. "We're going to decline." Elf tilted her head, all 4 eyes at a slight angle, which on her species indicates genuine puzzlement rather than offense. "You just cleared a syndicate boarding party in 11 minutes. "I know," Sierra said. "We had somewhere to be before all this." She glanced at the thermos. "Does this station have coffee? Real coffee, not synthesized. I've been thinking about it for 6 days." There was a pause. "No," Elf said. "That's fine," Sierra said. She said it the same way she had said 2 minutes is fine, a variable that fell within acceptable parameters. "We'll sort it at the next stop." She thanked me for the lockdown. She framed it as a logistics contribution, clean and without ceremony, and I recorded it that way in the supplemental because it was accurate. She deflected the word "remarkable" when Elf used it. She said the station's foam dispensers had done most of the work on the breach, which is technically true in the way that a hammer technically does the work when someone swings it. The GPA response arrived at 17:22, while Sierra's crew was already in the docking bay beginning repairs on the Caledonia. I had been keeping the pending field on my screen. I will admit this. Every time I passed my desk I looked at it. The digit 9 and the word pending, and a reference chart that stopped 3 classes too early. The response loaded completely. I read it once. I read it again. Then I sat down, which I do not normally do at my filing desk, and I read it a 3rd time. Kareth 9. Environmental Classification, Class 9. I will explain what Class 9 means, because it was not in my reference and it may not be in yours. The classification scale does not stop at Class 7. It continues. Class 8 designates a persistence predator environment where survival past adolescence requires physiological adaptation over multiple generations, accelerated skeletal density, modified reflex architecture, musculature optimized for leverage rather than raw output. Species that originate on Class 8 worlds are flagged in all engagement databases as threat adjacent, and are listed under separate protocols in every military engagement framework I have since been able to locate. Class 9 is what happens when you take a Class 8 world and raise the predator load. The file included a brief clinical summary of what growing up on Kareth 9 produces in a human body. I am going to describe 3 things from it, because 3 is what I can write in a report without the report requiring its own classification. The first, the leverage mechanics. The human body in standard galactic anatomy is not designed for the kind of redirection she had used on Vraxshol. The bones are not dense enough, the joint architecture not calibrated for the load. On Kareth 9, where the predators average 3 times human mass and are faster, a body that cannot redirect rather than absorb a charge does not produce offspring. Over enough generations the body learns, not metaphorically, structurally. The second, the reflex ceiling. Standard threat assessment scales measure reflex response on a stimulus-to-reaction curve. The Kareth 9 entry noted that human subjects from this origin point consistently register below the curve's lower threshold, not because their reflexes are slow, but because the measuring instrument was not built to capture the speed at the top end. Every scanner I own stops at a certain point. Above that point, the field reads empty. The third, the pain tolerance adaptations. I'm not going to write what the file said here. What I will write is this. When Vraxshol shoved her 4 meters across the deck and she hit the floor, the impact registered on my scanner as a force that would have caused significant structural damage in a non-adapted human. She came up from it in under 4 seconds. The file explained why. I sat at my desk for a while after reading this. She had not struck him. Not once, not really. Every contact had been a redirect, a borrowed momentum, a controlled landing point. The throw that put him through the air had used his own charge as the engine. She had given him back exactly what he brought, aimed differently. I calculated quietly, in my head without writing it, what Vrakshaw would have experienced if she had been striking rather than redirecting. If she had applied the leverage mechanics, the file described to a target instead of a vector. If she had decided, at any point in those 11 minutes, that the geometry of the situation called for something other than restraint. I closed the file. I did not write the calculation in the report. No record, no documentation, no consequence. Those were three things I chose not to create. The report would say, controlled response, non-lethal, proportionate engagement. And it would be accurate. It would simply be a subset of what was true. I wrote the new station protocol that evening. It took me 4 drafts to find language that was accurate without being alarming. The final version reads, all vessels crewed by human personnel requesting emergency docking on Platform 63 are to be processed under threat-adjacent classification pending incident review, with full security disclosure and expedited clearance. It is the first new protocol Platform 63 has issued in 11 cycles. Elf signed it at 1940 without changing a word. The Caledonia was spaceworthy again in 2 days. Methodical work. The crew moved through the repairs the way they moved through the corridors, without waste. The station engineers found reasons to be in Bay 7 during that time. They did not always have tasks there. They were watching and learning things, and those things did not always have names yet. I visited the bay on the morning of departure. The freighter looked functional. Not beautiful, the ablative scar where the port engine had been was still smooth and final, and the hull plates still held opinions about their own alignment. But the systems were live, the seals were good, and Sierra was running a final check with the focused attention of someone who trusts their own work and is verifying it anyway. She saw me coming, she waited. We stood at the foot of the ramp. There was not much to say that the incident report had not already said more precisely. She extended her hand, I took it. She shook once clean and let go. Good station, she said. Adequate hydraulics, I said. She made the face of someone who has heard a lot of excuses for bad hydraulics. Then she went up the ramp. The Caledonia undocked at 09:14. It cleared the platform's proximity threshold in 4 minutes, which is fast for a freighter of its registered class, and folded into FTL without filing a destination. Gone. I returned to my desk. The thermos was there. No note, just the thermos, sitting where she had first set it, equidistant between where I stood and the edge of the desk, the same placement as the first morning, as if it had been returned to its exact original position. The label faced up, do not touch. The station's engineering team had already, in the 2 days since the incident, begun referring to it as the Bay 7 mascot. I had heard the phrase twice before departure. I did not comment on it. I filed the final incident report at 10:33. It ran to 9 supplemental forms. The last field is a standard Letharian administrative requirement. Any item deemed central to the incident must receive an object of record designation for archival purposes. I considered the thermos for a moment. The dents, the heat scoring, the faded lettering. An object that had been through more than my station had, by a margin I could not calculate. I typed, thermos, vacuum-rated, human manufacture, causal factor, indeterminate. I submitted the report. My bioluminescent stripe was still faintly off color. I checked the standard reference. The entry said this should resolve within 4 hours of the stressor removing itself. I had been off color for 31 hours, then 33, and now it was 55 hours since the Caledonia had folded out of the system, and I was still sitting at a slightly wrong color, and the reference had nothing further to offer me on the subject. The thermos sat on the corner of my desk. I looked at it for a while. Then I wrote the final line of the incident report, the summary field, which protocol requires to be a single sentence of no more than 20 words. Threat model failure. The syndicate calculated mass. It forgot to calculate spite. I submitted it and went back to work.